Hardy-Weinberg. All right, so last time we were talking about what happens in a perfect situation. In a perfect world, how do allelic frequencies change? And we saw the same thing over and over and over again. If you don't change if there's no migration coming in, if there's no new alleles being formed, if there's a small population size, totally random mating, you always end up having these same things happening over and over and over again. The same allelic frequencies get passed from one generation to the next. And we can predict what those frequencies are using Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium. It becomes our null model, the model in which we compare everything else to. Today, we're talking about what happens when that doesn't hold true. What happens when Hardy-Weinberg, when you do it, doesn't equal 1, or when the allelic frequencies will change from one generation to the next. In short, we're describing the molecular version of evolution. What's happening among the alleles? So alleles are always changing. The frequency of alleles is always changing. It's not going to stay constant, and that's because you get new mutations. You might have one allele providing a reproductive advantage. There might be natural selection. It could be that the population is so small that random, stupid, dumb chance will change allelic frequencies. This tile might fall, crush this table, and their alleles are gone forever and ever and ever. That's probably not going to happen again. Migration will occur. You bring in new alleles from outside, or emigration will occur. You have alleles leaving. And you might even have one gender or the other having a preference for mates, what their mate looks like, and that leaves some weird forms. Hardy-Weinberg is a complete and total mathematical construct. It holds true in a perfect but not real world. In real life, allelic frequencies are constantly changing due to evolutionary mechanisms. We're always getting change. So even though Charles Darwin first proposed his idea of the origin of the species by means of natural selection, that's not the end-all be-all. In fact, that's just a really, really small part of evolution. It talks about one aspect, natural selection. But there's a whole bunch of aspects he completely and totally missed. Not to mention all of the molecular version of it. Evolution is defined as, and please remember, it is defined as a change in the genetic structure of a population over time. That is, a change in the allelic frequencies over time. I love this image. I like that image too, but I love this image right here. This is a graph showing allelic frequencies among different populations in Europe. And it was looking at basically some neutral alleles that don't really impact reproduction. And you start to see clusters of the alleles. And you can't see all the colors perfectly, but you'll notice that here's, Spanish-speaking group, France, Belgium, Britain, Norway, Germany, Sweden, Poland, Russia. You'll notice that the alleles are clustering in groups. And they're clustering in groups by language. It just happens that it also starts to look like basically a map of Europe, right? Spain, France, Britain's usually over here in Europe, moving over into Russia. Now, why would you expect, college students, that people who speak the same language tend to have similar frequencies and alleles? Why would that be important?
So that they can figure out whether or not they want to have children.
Right, and it comes down to, if you can't talk to somebody, it becomes very hard to mate with them. Does that make sense? Yeah, I mean, we use our language to find a mate. So if you're speaking French, you get a lot of French people to be able to mate with each other. There's some overlap between Polish and Russian alleles. Why is that? Do you think? Very similar languages. They can communicate. Oh, I do have a fun This is my fun joke. So, if you speak 2 languages, what are you called? Bilingual, right? You guys know that. Yeah? Okay, cool. Words. If you speak 3 languages, what are you? Trilingual. What if you speak 1 language? You're American. Yeah. So there you go. I really, really respect people who can speak multiple languages. A good friend of mine was a polyglot. She picked up languages like crazy. I cannot do it. I learned enough to get by when I was over in Europe, and that's it. And I did not eat well. New mutations occur. New mutations, so one allele, one gene being turned into another. You're getting a single change in a gene. What was the single most common change in a gene? A point mutation, which leads to a single nucleotide polymorphism. So one point, one place on a gene will change, and that changes the whole allele. So now instead of having a single allele for this population, now we have 2. And then we see how those alleles move through the population due to random mating. Natural selection. Natural selection is the process by which heritable beneficial traits increase in frequency in successive generations. That is, if you are good at producing children, some trait that you have that to increase your chance of producing children will get passed down to their offspring, and they'll be able to produce more children. And then they'll be able to produce more, and eventually you'll have a large group that has this new beneficial allele compared to the overall population. If you have, I don't know, let's talk about birch trees. What color are birch trees? All you Minecraft players? White and black. So if you have these white and black birch trees, and you have a white and black moth that lands on it, it's hidden. If, though, there's a bright yellow moth that lands on the white tree, it's going to be seen very easily. The yellow moth, that yellow allele, will decrease in frequency as it does not get to reproduce often. The white and black moth will increase in frequency for its alleles because it's able to reproduce more successfully. So natural selection promotes what looks like adaptation. That is, it was amazing to Darwin and actually to all of the ancient humans. Organisms were adapted to whatever they were doing. Fish are really fast in water, but not so great on land, right? They're really adapted to water. The natural selection promotes that. It makes it so that these organisms become better and better adapted to their individual environments. So here we've got some crows. These crows are eating green beetles. They love green beetles in a population of mainly green beetles. In that green beetle population, a yellow allele arose, maybe from a mutation, maybe it migrated in. Over time, you'll notice that the number of green is decreasing compared to the number of orange. And finally, these crows have eaten all of the greens, and you end up with fixation of the orange allele. Now, fixation rarely happens due to adaptation. What's going to happen to these birds now that they've eaten all the greens? Now, there's no more food. They starve to death and die. Which crow is going to be able to survive? The ones who prefer orange. And then that preference for orange will get spread to the next generation, and you get a nice balance. Among predators and prey, this is an idea that will come up many, many times, and it's because I am a population geneticist. You end up with what's called the Red Queen theory. Anybody heard of Alice? Oh, you've heard of Alice in Wonderland. Most of you probably haven't read the book. But in Alice in Wonderland, there's a moment where Alice is told by the Red Queen that she has to run as fast as she can just to stay in the same spot. And you guys know, isn't that life? Like, you guys are all trying super hard, and you probably feel like you're not getting anywhere. That's how it works in nature, too. As prey adapt to their predators, the predators are also adapting to their prey. It's an evolutionary arms race. As the The number of orange beetles goes up. Some crows become more adept at getting the orange beetles, and the orange beetles then need some sort of new camouflage. They need some sort of new defense, at which point the crows get a new offense. Back and forth, back and forth. Natural selection forms the basis for the modern theory of evolution. It's the idea that a new allele or a new mutation will create a brand new allele, and that brand new allele will change the amino acid sequence of a protein. All right, so we're changing the amino acids. We're changing the string. If we've changed an amino acid, we change the form of the protein. And if we change the form, what else have we changed? The function. Form determines function. You change the form of the alleles of the amino acid sequence, you change the function of the ultimate protein. And a lot of times that's a deleterious mutation. If suddenly your blood was no longer able to carry oxygen, that would be bad. You would die. It's not going to be suddenly. That would have happened when you were like in utero, and then you just die there. Some alleles will happen. Most mutations will be deleterious. They'll hurt you. They'll mean you can't reproduce as well. But some, they're going to enhance survival. They're going to make it a bit easier for you to live. Here we've got, I guess these are, what are these? Mollies? It might be mollies. These are tropical fish. They live in rivers in in the Pacific. Well, you know, on an island in the Pacific. There are no rivers in the Pacific. Anyways, you got a light-colored form and a dark-colored form. In these rivers, you could have either a light sandy bottom or dark lava sand. A or B, who will survive better in the dark lava sand? B. They're not going to be seen as well from above. They're not going to be eaten as much. They will be able to pass their alleles on to the next generation better than the light form. Same island, there are rivers that have light-colored sand. In those, A will be selected for. So even though you have the exact same fish species, you have different morphs or different forms that are surviving in different pockets. Now here's my question, and this is harkening back to last lecture. If you've got different types of fish, different morphs of fish, swimming among these rivers, and the rivers merge together, they are able to reproduce together, what would that group of fish be called? Starting with a P. A population. If those rivers are entirely separate and they can't get to each other, let's say it's like lakes up in the Midwest. There are a bunch of fish in these lakes up there. Each individual lake is closed off from the other lakes. There might not be rivers connecting them, at which point those are termed, those different ones are called separate populations. You have to be able to mate with each other. The individuals with more beneficial alleles are the most likely to survive and contribute their genes to the next generation. This is the slide I started getting in trouble for at work because I was like, I would like to see pictures of animals mating. And they're like, that's not a safe thing to look at. Never turn your safe search off. You have protists coming together to share their macronuclei. Sharks, I kid you not, this is how sharks mate. Shark males have these two, they're called claspers, that they insert into the cloaca of the female. But to do that, the male usually bites onto her fin, and they run their heads into the ground. Yeah, shark sex, awesome. Turtle sex, hilarious. Just look on his face right there. Just that look right there. You guys ever seen turtles having sex? Yeah? Did you hear turtles having sex? It's the best thing ever. Because all of you have actually seen that, I don't need to turn it on. But I was going to, the sounds they make as they mate is just like, here's my impression of turtles mating. It goes, just like that. That's the best turtle mating impression you will hear in your life. Anything to increase reproductive success is what will improve allelic frequencies. So over generation after generation after generation, the allelic frequency of the beneficial allele increases, the deleterious allele, the one that's not as reproductively successful, will decrease. So far, so good.